Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it just a few moments to let individuals trickle into our webinar today before we get started. Well, great. We have a good number of individuals here with us today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for taking your lunch hour to connect with us in our informational webinar provided by the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, a great partner of the California Community Colleges and the California State University system. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the naturalization process. But before we get started with Allison and Eric today, I just have a couple of housekeeping items that I'd like to get out of the way. Today's webinar is being recorded. You all will receive a copy of the recording in the next day or so, along with all of the resources that we have shared with you today. Contact information for our panelists will also be provided towards the end of the presentation, as well as in the follow-up email. For those of you that do need closed captioning, we have captioning available. If you hover down at the bottom right of your screen and click the closed captioning icon with the double C's, you should be able to enable those captions. Throughout the course of today's presentation, we'll be answering questions, and we have set some time aside towards the end for Q&A with our two panelists today. Feel free to use the Q&A or the chat box to ask any relevant questions. I know there'll probably be many questions, but we'll try to get to them to as many as we can throughout today's presentation. With that being said, I'll pass it over to our two panelists to get us started. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Alonzo. We're really happy to be here with all of you today. I'm Allison Kamai. I'm the Legal Program Director at the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, and joined today by Eric Cohen, the Executive Director of the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. I want to start by saying that what we'll be able to provide today is just an overview of naturalization. There are a lot of different pieces of naturalization eligibility. We will go over them in brief. This presentation is really meant as an introduction. It's the basics, what to look for. For those of you who are applying for naturalization or looking to apply for naturalization, I really encourage you to take a look at other resources as well and talk to a legal services provider. So at the end of our presentation, Alonzo will provide more information about where to look for legal workers and some additional filing tips and resources as well. So I'm going to start by saying just a few words about the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, and in particular, how we can help you. So we do work in three primary areas. We work with the immigrant community, where we do education, outreach, and community organizing. We also work in law and policy, where we try to push forward laws and policies that would expand the rights of immigrants and try to prevent laws and policies that would have a negative impact on the immigrant community. And then the third bucket of work that we do, we provide a lot of trainings, resources, and case-specific consultations to practitioners and others. And so what we have in store for you today, I have the agenda up on the screen. We're going to say just a few words about what is naturalization. Why are we talking about it? Why naturalize? Eric's then going to take us through the basic requirements for naturalization. So 7 requirements, and talk a little bit about each of them. And then I will put up on our slides a red flag checklist that we have, and we'll put it in the chat box as well, so you can have it for your records. Just what should we be looking out for when screening for naturalization eligibility? And then finally, we'll just have a list of the process for naturalization. And again, break for questions, but please do keep the questions coming while we're speaking. We will try to get to them in writing or at the end. So what is naturalization? Naturalization is a way to apply to become a U.S. citizen. It is not the only way to be a U.S. citizen. The most common way of becoming a U.S. citizen is by being born in the United States. Naturalization is a way to apply for citizenship. It's also not the only way to get citizenship for folks who are not born in the United States, and just want to flag that there are other ways for children to acquire or derive or have citizenship through their US citizen parents, or have their US citizen parents apply for them. But what we're talking about today is naturalization. And that is a process where someone who is born in another country and who has a green card, so we're talking about lawful permanent residence, can apply and become a US citizen. And there are 9 million folks estimated in this country who are eligible to naturalize. That's a lot of people. And over 90% of naturalization applications are granted. So a lot of people are eligible with a pretty high likelihood of getting naturalization granted. But fewer than 1 million folks apply for naturalization each year. So part of what we do at the ILRC through our New Americans campaign work and other work is really try to spread the word about naturalization. For folks who are eligible and want to apply, we're here to talk about the benefits and what the eligibility requirements look like. So why might somebody want to naturalize? And this is going to really depend on the person's, what's your situation, what do you want? But here are some of the common reasons that folks talk about. So number one, you can vote in the United States. And we do naturalization workshops, ask people, why are you here? Why are you naturalizing? This is one of the first things that often comes up, the right to vote. You can travel on a US passport. For some people, this can be a real benefit. You can obtain certain jobs available for US citizens only, usually certain government jobs. You can obtain certain public benefits as a citizen that might not be available otherwise. You can run for elected office as a citizen. You can help other close relatives immigrate to the United States and obtain a green card. So lawful permanent residents, they can petition for their kids who are unmarried and under 21 and their spouses. US citizens can petition for a green card for not only their kids, also their sons and daughters who are over 21 or who are married, also their parents and also their siblings. So it's a greater opportunity for family unity. And then finally, you can live outside the United States without losing US citizenship. If you have a green card and you move outside the United States, it could be really tricky to get back in the United States. You could be charged with abandoning your green card. If you are a US citizen, you can move to another country and you have the right to come back. Now, are there any downsides, right? This all sounds pretty good. I'll mention a few that affect certain folks or could affect certain folks. First is that you could lose your present citizenship. This depends on your country of nationality. Many countries offer dual nationality, but this is something that could happen depending on where you're from, as whether being a citizen of the United States would affect that, your current nationality. Second, it's a process. It can cost money and it takes time. Alonzo will talk at the end about some fee support. There's also fee waivers for eligible folks, but it does still take time, and that's something to be prepared for. It's usually worth it. The benefits far outweigh the cost of naturalizing for most folks, but it's something to know going into it. And then finally, for a certain small group of folks, there are instances where you could be denied naturalization and even deported. And this would be based on certain immigration or criminal violations in your past. And this is something that we will take a little bit closer look at towards the end of the presentation. But now I will turn it over to Eric to talk about the 7 basic requirements.
Thank you, Allison. Hello all. So we will run through the 7 basic requirements for naturalization. You don't need to memorize them, but we do want to become familiar with them. And I will refer to some other things that Allison brought up and that she will bring up in a few minutes as well. So the first requirement is that you must be at least 18 years old. The You can't apply before your 18th birthday. You have to apply when you're 18 or older. And it is possible that if you're under 18 and one or both of your parents naturalized while you're under 18 and you are a green card holder, you may already be a citizen. So that's something to look into. People under 18 can't naturalize, but they can become citizens through their parents at times. This is called derivation of citizenship. And encourage you that if one or both of your parents naturalized while you were under 18 and you had a green card, to look into that before you apply for naturalization, because you might already be a naturalized a US citizen. So the second basic requirement is you have to be a green card holder. That's called a lawful permanent resident. You have to have a green card. And you have to have that green card for at least 5 years prior to qualifying for naturalization. So if I get my green card today, this is May the 10th, 2022, I'm going to have to wait 5 years until May of 2027 to qualify for naturalization. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. The main exception is if I'm married to a United States citizen, instead of having to wait 5 years to qualify for naturalization, I only have to wait 3 years to qualify for naturalization if I'm married to a United States citizen. So generally, I have to have a green card for 5 years, but if I'm married to a United States citizen, generally I only have to wait 3 years. So that's good. I get 2 years less, right? There are some limited exceptions for people in the military as well. Some people in the military actually don't even need to be lawful permanent residents to qualify for naturalization. That's another conversation for another day, but certainly if you've been in the military, you should contact one of the organizations that you'll be, that Alonzo will share with you later, and talk to them about people in the military and naturalization. One other important key requirement for naturalization is that green card has to be a valid green card. So some people mistakenly or on purpose might have gotten their green card when they weren't eligible. Maybe the USCIS, the Department of Homeland Security, made a mistake in giving you your green card. Maybe someone committed fraud on your behalf. Well, in those instances, if you apply for naturalization, you might end up being denied and actually put in deportation proceedings and deported because there was fraud or mistake made on your green card and your green card wasn't valid. Now, I'm not trying to scare you here, because it happens very, very rarely that people commit fraud or people, their green cards were approved by mistake. But just want to make sure that you knew that. Okay, let's go to the basic requirement number 3. The third requirement is that you have to have continuous residence in the United States for that 5-year period that you have to have shown that you are a green card holder. So not only do you have to have a green card for 5 years, you have to have continuous residence in the United States for those 5 years. An exception, remember we talked about the exception, you only have to wait 3 years if you're married to a spouse of you, if you're the spouse of a US citizen. You only have to have 3 years as a green card holder if you're the spouse of a US citizen. So therefore, you only have to show continuous residence for 3 years if you're the spouse of a citizen. 5 years generally, 3 years continuous residence if you're spouse of a citizen. Now, what does continuous residence mean? Well, there are all these fandangled definitions of it, but the most important thing you need to know that long absences could cause problems, could cause you to be denied. And so this is what we call the absences requirement. Generally, if you've been gone for more than a year, you're probably not going to qualify for naturalization if you've been gone for more than a year over the last 5 years. But any absence 6 months or more, you need to check it out with an expert and make sure that you could still qualify for naturalization. Very, very important. So if you have an absence of 6 months or more within the last 5 years, or 3 years, if you're applying as a spouse of a United States citizen, then you should check with an expert to see if that absence might impact your naturalization case. Or even more importantly, what Allison talked about, abandonment residence. If you live in another country, you have long absences from the United States and you live in another country, that can impact whether or not you're still a lawful permanent resident, still a green card holder. Then if you apply for naturalization, they can find all that out. They meaning the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the government, and you could have a whole bundle of issues, including being placed in deportation proceedings and possibly deported. Very rarely happens, but I just want to warn you, long absences, check with an expert. The fourth requirement is that you have to show good moral character during the 5-year period that you have during the 5-year period immediately preceding your application for naturalization and until your naturalization application is adjudicated and you're sworn in to being a naturalized citizen. So you have to show good moral character for those 5 years. Or remember the exception, the 3-year exception, you have to show good moral character for 3 years if you're the spouse of a United States citizen and you're applying that way. Now, you might think, which is a good question, well, what the heck does good moral character mean? And the truth is, it's an amorphous definition. It's more of an art than a science. And it means that certain crimes could cause you not to have good moral character. Certain immigration violations could cause you to have good moral character. Certain other activities could impact your good moral character, such as not filing your taxes, such as not paying child support, perhaps, if you have children, such as not registering for the draft, the military draft, if you're a male. Now, these aren't automatic disqualifications. They're just possible ways in which you could be denied naturalization because of a lack of good moral character. Now, I want to mention something else about good moral character and absences. This is very, very important. So when someone applies for naturalization, what they're doing is they're affirmatively, voluntarily going to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, the federal government of the United States, and saying, here, check me out. I'm applying for naturalization. I complete this 20-page application and pay my fee, or maybe you get a fee waiver, or you get the California government to pay for it, which would be wonderful. And so what the United States government's doing is they're going to look at you with a microscope. They're going to have a file on all your immigration history. Did you come legally? How did you come? They're going to have files on all your criminal history because you're going to submit a fingerprint form. And they're going to know whether or not you've been in trouble with the law, and if you've been convicted, and if you've served time, and whether or not those crimes might impact your good moral character and might actually cause you to be deported. So you're kind of walking yourself into the lion's den. But as Allison said, 90% of the people, no problem. There are a few people, 10%, who get denied. Most people, as you'll find out in a minute, get denied because of lack of English. But there are some people who get denied because of a lack of good moral character. And a small subsection of those might actually be deportable and end up being put in deportation proceedings. Once again, I don't want to scare you. These are instances like murder, child abuse. There's things like drug sales generally. And sometimes you can get those convictions erased. But we want to just make sure that you know that there are problems. Really want to encourage you to apply for naturalization. But as you'll see when Allison refused the red flag checklist, if you check yes to any of the red flag checklists, you have to go see an expert to make sure not only can you qualify, but you don't have other problems. Okay, so let's go on to the next group of basic requirements. Basic requirement number 5. And before we go to number 5, I want to review the first 4 with you again. Remember what they are. You have to be at least 18 years old. You have to have a green card for at least 5 years or 3 years if you're married to a U.S. citizen. You have to watch certain absences from the United States because you have to show continuous residence. So you have to not have long absences, depending. And if you have absences of 6 months or longer, you want to go check, you want to get some expert advice. And then number 4, you have to show good moral character. When? During that 5-year period that you have to be a lawful permanent resident, or during the 3-year period that you have to be a lawful resident if you're applying as a spouse of a United States citizen. So those are the first 4 requirements. Now let's go on to the next 3 requirements. So requirement number 5 is you have to have basic knowledge of English, spoken, read, and written English. You have to speak, read, and write English at a basic level. You do not have to be fluent, okay? You do not have to be an expert. You really have to be somewhat conversant, but not great. You have to be able to understand casual conversation. You have to be able to understand most of the application form when asked in English. And you have to be able to carry on just a basic conversation. Now, there are a couple of exceptions and there's a waiver. And let's talk about the exceptions first. If you are at least 55 years old and have had a green card for at least 15 years, you do not have to speak, read, or write English. I used to call this the old person exception, but now that I'm over 55, I don't call it that anymore. I call it the middle-aged person exception. So once again, you're at least 55 years old and have had a green card for at least 15 years. And you're probably sitting there saying, well, I go to San Francisco State. I'm still a college kid, you know, I'm not 55. But maybe your mother or father is 55. Maybe your grandparents are 55. 55 and a green card for at least 15 years. Or you're at least 50 years old and have had a green card for at least 20 years. Crazy that they have these 2 similar but different exceptions. But once again, if it doesn't qualify, if it doesn't apply to you, it could apply to your aunt or your parent or your grandparents or an older sibling. And so that means that you don't have to speak, read, or write English. You don't have to speak, read, or write in any language if you fall within these two exceptions, okay? Now, there is a third exception. And the third exception is that you have a mental, physical, or developmental disability that makes you unable to learn or demonstrate English. This is called a disability waiver. You need a doctor to fill it out, but it's for people who might have learning disabilities and they can't learn English. It's for people who might have developmental disabilities and they can't learn English. It's for people who might have mental disabilities and they can't learn English. Maybe they have strong anxiety, people who have dementia, people who have Alzheimer's, people who maybe have gotten an accident and can't learn English. Those people can get a waiver, and so they don't need to speak, read, or write English at any level. And they don't need to speak, read, or write Spanish or Korean or anything. They can take the test, I mean the interview, they can do the interview in their own language, okay? Very, very important to know. And if you don't speak English well enough, you can take classes, obviously, and learn better English. So let's go to basic requirement number 6. And that requirement is that you must pass a test on US history and government. This is called the civics exam. It's the civics requirement. By the way, I forgot to say the most common reason why people fail get denied naturalization is because they fail the English test. And if you fail the English or civics test, you get, within 90 days, you get another bite out of the apple. You get to take it again for free. You don't have to apply again. You get it automatically. You get rescheduled for another chance. You get to study a little more. But the civics test is based on 100 questions of US government and history. You'll be asked 10 of those, random 10, okay? And they're questions as easy as, you know, who was the first president of the United States? Where does the president live? Who's the president now? As well as much more complicated questions. What were named, I think it's 8 of the first 13 colonies or something like that. So those are things that I would have to memorize. You all might know it better than I do, but I would have to memorize. So this is wonderful that even though I'm set, 60, and I don't have to take, I've been in the United States with a green card for 20 years. I don't have to take the test in English. I don't have to speak English. I do have to take the test, but I can take it in my own language. I can take it in Spanish if that's my language. I can take it in Russian if that's my language. So that's wonderful. I can take classes as well. And there are a lot of classes out there on how to get around and pass the civics test. You need to get 6 out of 10 right. 6 out of 10. So you need 60% or better. Okay. Let's go to the final requirement for naturalization, the last step in the process, and the final requirement. The final requirement is the oath requirement. You have to swear allegiance to the United States and take a loyalty oath to the United States. You have to swear allegiance not to the United States, but to the Constitution of the United States and the form of government we have. And so how does that manifest itself? Well, after the interview, if you pass the test and the USCIS adjudicator determines that you're eligible, and they grant you naturalization, then they schedule you for an oath ceremony. Now, before the pandemic, the oath ceremonies were these wonderful displays of pageantry with a couple thousand people in a beautiful hall, and they had a speaker often, and they had music, and everyone was raised their right hand together. Sometimes they had a judge, but then the pandemic hit, and they had to stop that for obvious reasons. So now they're much smaller. They're usually the same day as the actual, or often the same day as the actual interview you have, which is great because it happens right away. Sometimes it's right after the interview. Sometimes it's at the end of the day. Sometimes you might be called in, and they're much smaller. But it's still a wonderful opportunity. You get to take a loyalty oath. You get to be a citizen right away. They'll give you a certificate of citizenship. And once you have your certificate, not before, but once you have your certificate, you can then apply for your United States passport. Different process, but all you have to do is show a copy of your certificate, and you will be granted a passport. It costs an extra sum of money, a couple $100, I think it is. I'm not sure exactly, but you have to go through that process. So just in summary, the 7 basic requirements again. You have to be at least 18. You have to be a lawful permanent resident with some exceptions for the military. You have to be careful of long absences, many absences, because you have to show continuous residence. So you have a lot of absences or an absence over 6 months, you'll have to check with an expert. You have to show good moral character for at least 5 years or 3 years if you're applying as a spouse of a United States citizen. You have to speak basic English. You have to pass the civics test, and you have to take the oath of allegiance. Those are 7 basic requirements. Once again, we don't want to scare you from applying. We want to empower you to apply. We want you to be able to understand these requirements so that you can know whether you might qualify, and you can go get some expert help. And now I'm going to turn back over to Allison, who's going to go over some really complicated problems you might have, and that you don't automatically disqualify yourself, but you go to an expert to see if you qualify.
Thanks so much. So I'm going to put in the chat box the link to a red flag checklist that we have up on our website. We have a screenshot on your screen as well, but if you follow that link, you'll see that there is a flyer here. We have it in English and Spanish and Chinese. And why do we have this? We have this to be just that. It is a checklist for red flags. It is looking for, is there anything in your history about your application that raises a little red flag? It doesn't mean you're not eligible. It doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. It doesn't mean you're not going to get granted. All it means is that there is something there that you want to look into a little bit deeper, that there's a red flag that's raised that you want to talk to an expert. And Eric just laid out all the eligibility requirements. And so as we go through the questions, you'll see what they're referring to, that these questions are talking about things that might make you ineligible. Not necessarily, but they might, and it's something you want to get more records on, more information, see an expert, and decide whether to go forward. So just going to go through what's on your screen here. And if you're going through there, you would just look. And if there's anything here that applies, you would check it off and see an expert. If there's nothing here, then we would say, okay, doesn't look like there are any red flags. Seems like this should be a pretty straightforward application. So the first one here, you made trips out of the United States for more than 6 months. Eric just mentioned this. So a trip outside of the United States for more than 6 months, that could affect your eligibility. It could, if you've been gone for more than 6 months, you might not be able to show continuous residence. You might not be able to show physical presence. You might even have a hard time showing that you've maintained your lawful permanent residence. Somebody might argue, hey, you abandoned it. You've been gone for a while. Maybe you've been gone for a year or 2 years, right? That could really affect your eligibility. Absences matter. That's why it's the first question on here. Have you been gone for more than 6 months? And the second on here is related. You moved to another country since getting your green card. Okay, so having a green card means you can live and work permanently in the United States, lawful permanent residence. It does not mean you can move to another country and live and work there. You could be charged with having abandoned your residence, and that would mean you're no longer an LPR and not eligible for naturalization. So if you have moved to another country, that is a red flag. Are you in deportation or removal proceedings? It's going to add some complicating factors, and you're going to want to talk to an expert. Have you ever been deported? Doesn't mean you're not eligible, but it's something you want to look into. How did you re-enter the country? Was all of that disclosed? You just want to make sure your ducks are in a row. Have you ever helped or provided support, including financial, to a group that attacked others or attempted to overthrow another country's government? Sounds scary here. What we're really looking out for is anything that could be deemed to be terrorism, support for terrorism. And terrorism is very broadly defined. So for folks who got their green card through asylum, this is where you might want to look a little bit more carefully. Or if there was anything gang related, you'd want to look into this a little bit more carefully to make sure it wouldn't trigger anything that could be seen as support for terrorism. Have you ever failed to file federal, state, or local taxes? Or you owe taxes? So have you ever failed in the past, or you currently owe taxes? This doesn't mean, again, you're not eligible. It's just something that could come up. And this is something you can fix. If you've ever failed to file, you can go back and you can file them. You could back file your taxes. Or if you owe taxes, you could get on a payment plan. These are things that can be fixed, and USCIS actually has really great language about how if you're on a payment plan, then you should not be denied for lack of good moral character. So this is all something to look into because you can address it before applying for naturalization. Same with, have you ever failed to support your children, or you currently owe child support? So same thing, this could pop up. It could be a negative factor for good moral character. It's also something that you can fix. So if you have failed to support children or you owe child support, you can be on a payment plan. You could go into court, get that child support order modified to something that's more reasonable or feasible. You could try to, maybe you can explain, maybe you didn't have a job, maybe the ex-spouse wouldn't accept your payment, all different kinds of things that you could show, but it's something you'd want to look into. And as you can tell, we're only halfway down on the screen, which is itself only halfway down on the page. And the questions are all over the place, right? They're about absences, or about taxes, about child support, about materially supporting groups to attack the government, right? So a lot of different things. And these are the types of questions that are on the application form. So the government's going to be looking into those. So that's why it's important to look into them first to see if there's anything that would cause a red flag. So moving right along, are you male and did you not register for the selective service? This is something Eric mentioned, the draft. This can come up as part of good moral character. If you are a male between the ages of 18 and 26, you are required to register for the draft. Even if you're not a citizen, anybody who's living in the United States, in fact, even undocumented folks, if this is where you're living, you are required to register for the selective service, and that could come up as a good moral character issue. It's also something you can fix. If you're between the ages of 18 and 26, you can register. If you're below the age of 18, then you can't apply for naturalization anyway. If you're above the age of 26, it's too late to register. And it's something you'd want to look into if the failure to register comes within that good moral character time period, that 5 years or 3 years if married to a US citizen. So if you're 31 and younger, then that's something you didn't register. You want to look into why not. Did you not know about it? Was it willful? Were you not trying? You didn't want to register? These are the types of things you'd want to look into. And if you're over 31, then it's not going to be in that good moral character time period because it's been more than 5 years. Are you on probation or parole for a criminal conviction? If so, you're not eligible to naturalize. You're going to want to wait or try to get that probation or parole terminated early. You also want, as we'll talk about on the next page, it's important to know why you're on probation or parole in the first place, because that itself could cause a problem. Do you have any contradictory information on your application? It's a long application, it's a lot of pages, and you want to make sure you're saying the same thing on all the pages. Sometimes the questions get asked in similar questions get asked in different ways, and you want to make sure that you are answering the questions consistently. Have you ever lied or committed fraud to get your green card, or you weren't originally eligible for your green card when you got it? This is something Eric alluded to when he talked about, do you have a valid green card? Did you obtain it validly? Were you eligible? If not, that could unravel. When you apply for naturalization, they open up Pandora's box and look at all of the different things. Is there anything there that you weren't eligible for along the road? And that could unravel now. So something to look into. Okay, moving along here. Have you ever left the country for 30 days or more while you were receiving public benefits? So it is not a problem to receive public benefits. That is not something that's going to affect your naturalization eligibility, fortunately. What could affect naturalization eligibility is if you receive those public benefits fraudulently. If there is anything about that receipt of public benefits where you didn't report income or the household was counted differently, or where you left the country for 30 days or more, why might that matter? Here again, absences matter, right? It might matter because depending on the benefits you're receiving, it might, oftentimes you have to report if you're gone for more than a month because they're allotted on a monthly basis. And if you're not living in the United States, so if you're not here for that period, that month period, you oftentimes have to report that trip and not receive benefits for that month. This is something, it's a little technicality. It's confusing. Lots of people go on a trip and don't realize they're supposed to report these trips for 30 days or more. That's why we bring it up. It's something to flag, right, as a red flag. And it's something that could come up and often does come up on the naturalization application when you're listing your absences. That's how they'd find out. You have to list your entries and exits. You put down you were gone for 6 weeks. Next question might be, oh, I see you're receiving benefits. Did you report that absence? And if not, that could be an issue. This is also fixable. You can pay back if there's an overpayment if you didn't report. This again will depend on the benefits, depend on your specific situation. Doesn't mean you're not eligible, but just something to look into. Skipping down there, it says you lied or committed fraud to receive or continue to receive public benefits. That's going to the same issue. It's fine to receive public benefits, but did you receive them fraudulently? Is there anything on that benefits application that is not that is not correct, that you lied about in order to get benefits? The second one on here, have you ever been arrested or convicted of a crime? This phrase here contains a lot. There can be a lot of different things people can be arrested for, a lot of different things people can be convicted of. What you are convicted of will matter. Some convictions can bar you from establishing good moral character forever, can bar eligibility. Other convictions can bar you for a period of time, just for that 5-year period that Eric talked about, or a 3-year period if you're married to a US citizen. And some of them won't bar you at all for any time period. They're just going to be a negative act that you're going to need to disclose, to say, okay, this is what happened. I was arrested. I was convicted on this date, and need to explain credibly what happened. So just to make sure you have all the records and you're able to say what happened. But anytime there's an arrest or conviction record, it's important to get the documents, to see an expert, to make sure it's not going to bar you or cause a larger issue. Some convictions can be deportable offenses. That means that not only could you be barred from barred from naturalization eligibility, but it could also cause you to be placed in removal proceedings and deported. So that's why this is a big red flag, because crimes are not treated equally. Some you could just go right on ahead, as long as you're not on probation or parole. You can explain some mitigating circumstances, probably going to be okay. Others can lead you to potentially be deported. So definitely worth doing more research into. Moving along here, if you've ever helped someone enter the United States illegally, even if it was a relative, this is going to smuggling. There is a question on the naturalization application about smuggling. Did you help someone enter unlawfully? Worth looking into to see if it's going to be an issue. When did it happen? If it happened before you got your green card, was it disclosed? And was it waived if necessary? Did you ever claim to be a US citizen? It's false claim to US citizen. You're applying for a job, you said you were a citizen. This is stuff that could come out and good to know about. Again, it would depend on when and the circumstances. Have you ever been charged with committing domestic violence, child abuse, or child neglect? This is again, going to criminal record here. These are certain deportable convictions. If you have been convicted of domestic violence offenses, child abuse, child neglect, they can be, not always, but can be grounds of deportability. Same with violating a domestic violence protective order. All of this is stuff to get an expert opinion on. There's a lot of nuance, a lot of details. Sometimes these cases have been vacated legally and it won't affect you. Sometimes they've been vacated, but that dismissal won't count for immigration. All stuff to look into with an expert. Have you ever voted in the United States illegally? Maybe you didn't mean to. You didn't know you weren't eligible, you voted. There's a question about that. That can affect good moral character. Can also lead to other issues. Have you ever registered to vote? You didn't even vote, but you did register. Maybe you were trying to get a driver's license, accidentally registered. All stuff to tease apart. You want to deregister if that happens. Get your name off that list. Figure out what happened and be able to explain it. Have you ever made a living by illegally gambling? There's a question on there, believe it or not, about gambling. Have you ever been involved in prostitution? And this last one holds a lot of different stuff. Have you ever been a habitual drunkard? What does that mean? There's no great definition. This doesn't just mean have you ever been drunk. It doesn't even mean have you ever been drunk many times. they're really looking into something that's a condition that has dangerous behavior associated with it. So if you have a string of DUI arrests, that's the time that habitual drunkard could come up. Drug abuser, drug addict, same thing. How would they know? It would likely be based on a string of arrests for possession or use, or perhaps some other indications that somebody has been in and out of treatment. So something to look out for. And the last thing I'll mention related to this is a warning on marijuana. Here in California, marijuana is legal, but it is not legal federally. That's confusing, but what it means is that if there's any indication that you have been using marijuana, especially working in the marijuana industry, that can be a big problem from naturalization, and you want to talk to an expert. So that's a lot of information. We're just flagging this. This is literally just a red flag checklist. And that's, if anything is in your case, that's when you want to check with an expert. So on your screen, we just have the naturalization process. It just says the name of the form, the N-400, the payment amount, but I'm about to turn it over to Alonzo to give a little info on that. And then what you do is you submit your naturalization application, you study for those tests that Eric mentioned, you prepare, you take the tests, and then hopefully you pass, you're granted, and you take the oath. So I will turn it over to Alonzo, and then we will try to answer some questions.
Thanks, Allison. I'm going to bring on Laura Zaragoza to share a little bit about how the state of California is able to support in the filing fee. Laura? Laura, are you able to join us?
Yes, sorry, I was having technical difficulties. Just a second. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Zaragoza, and I'm a program analyst with the California Department of Social Services with the Immigration Services Bureau. So the Immigration Services Bureau oversees the implementation of immigration initiatives that are necessary to support the implementation of immigrant integration programs across the state. And I'm just here today to share a little bit about our newest program that we have available. So earlier this year, the California Department of Social Services made available $25 million in funding for the state of California to be able to cover DACA and naturalization filing fees. So as you'll learn today, in order to apply for naturalization and for DACA, there are not only legal fees associated with that, but also a filing fee that you must pay that is often a barrier for people to be able to take advantages of this benefit. So to bridge that gap, the California Department of Social Services now has funding available to cover this. So if you're a California Community College student or a CSU student, staff, or faculty, the only thing you need to do is to contact the assigned legal service provider for your campus. So as you know, there are assigned legal service providers for all the community colleges and the CSUs in the state. So as long as you contact one of them, they would be able to assist you with your filing fees. And I also want to highlight that this funding is also available to anyone in the state. So you don't necessarily have to be affiliated with the California Community College or a CSU to be able to access the funds. So if you're a regular community member, you must contact somebody from the list that Alonso just shared. So you can download that list. And we have legal service providers that are funded through CDSS, and you can find someone in any region of the state of California and they can assist you with that. So please just make sure that your campus community and your community at large know that this funding is available for them to take advantage of. That's all on my end. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Laura. So I know we've had a lot of questions throughout the presentation today, and some of them have been answered by our fabulous panelists throughout. So I'm going to try my best to get to as many questions as possible in the last few minutes that we have here. Let me get to my bank of questions. What was the name of the type of naturalization that occurs when your parents were naturalized when you were less than 18 years of age?
Alonzo, if I could answer that, and also I just found out I made a mistake in one of the chats. Um,
Okay.
but that process is called derivation of citizenship. And someone asked a question, if mom naturalized around the time the son turned 18, what should the son do? Ignore my answer. I got it completely wrong. I looked at it before I sent it, after I sent it. If mom naturalizes before son turns 18 and son has a green card, then son might have derived citizenship and become a US citizen automatically. Mom naturalizes before son turns 18. If mom naturalizes after son turns 18, then derivation of citizenship won't work and son needs to apply for naturalization on their own. I screwed up when I wrote it and said the exact opposite. I apologize.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm sure our attendees are appreciative of you fixing that for them. There was one question regarding the prostitution red flag for people who have been sex trafficked but escaped after and might have had any interaction with the police. Would this prostitution charge by the police ban them or be extremely difficult for them to deal with in terms of naturalization?
So it, I wonder if we're looking at the same one that it happened more than 5 years ago, and it's now expunged. So if it's more than 5 years ago, we're not worried about it affecting the good moral character time period, as long as there are no other issues within the good moral character time period, that 5-year period. And it's now been expunged. So really the question is just, is it going to cause any problems is it going to make them deportable in any way? We'd want to know what exactly were they convicted of? How is it expunged? These are all technical, complicated questions. We'd want to get the records, the criminal records, and talk to an expert. So asking all the right questions. So what were they charged with? What were they convicted of? And how was it expunged?
Great.
But it wouldn't affect that prostitution ground unless there was more evidence of them being prostitutes. We'd really just be wondering about, is there something here that would affect them, that would make them deportable?
Got it. Thank you. Similarly, if someone is if someone's registered as at a marijuana dispensary, would that qualify as proof that the person has used marijuana? Does that mean the individual will not be able to naturalize or face potential charges? How can they amend that if possible?
That is a really great question. So I don't know enough about the registry. Maybe Eric can chime in. I think people have been tripped up by social media. So sometimes people will post pictures of themselves with marijuana. We also know sometimes people are carrying cards as they re-enter the country. It's on them in their wallet. It gets pulled out and can be an issue. So you want to be super duper careful here. We saw under the previous administration a little bit more phishing for folks who might have been using marijuana lawfully, didn't realize that it could cause problems for naturalization. So I don't know much about the dispensary registry, but I'd also just be concerned, where else is it showing up in publicly for that person? I don't know, Eric, if you have anything to add.
I don't. I don't. There are other people at our office who know this stuff really well, but I'm not one of them. But you want to stay away from working in the marijuana industry, even if it's legal here in the United States. It's not legal in the United States. It's legal here in California. And Manny just sent out a good resource on marijuana through the chat box that people could hop on. But I don't know if just merely registering at a marijuana facility is enough to get you in trouble. I just don't know that answer.
Great. I think the best advice would be to connect with a legal service provider. and be able to do that full comprehensive screening and be able to ask all of those very personal questions and hopefully try to get to you the right answer in your naturalization journey. There was a question regarding FAFSA and if they are eligible to apply once they become naturalized.
Oh, yeah. You mean student loans?
Federal financial aid.
Yeah, yeah. Naturalized citizens are allowed to apply for financial aid just like any other citizens.
Great. And then I do see in the chat box that someone has dropped in a resource from the ILRC on cannabis, so we'll include that as well in our follow-up email. I do see a couple of questions regarding some of the filing fee assistance, so I'm going to just kind of circle back a little bit and provide a little bit of clarity. There are two different fund assistance. There's one for that Laura from CDSS shared, which is the $25 million fund for the general California population to be able to receive support with their naturalization application filing fee and for their DACA filing fee. The California community colleges have set aside a different funding stream to be able to support the students directly. All of the legal service providers, both at the Cal State or the community colleges and the general population, are able to support. We just ask that you connect with them directly. If you have your own private attorney, you won't be eligible to receive the filing fee assistance. You'll have to go through one of the many approved providers throughout the state of California. And we'll provide a little bit more clarity in our follow-up email as to where those distinctions are made in terms of legal service providers. And then there is another question regarding how long does it take to apply for citizenship?
$1 million question. It depends on where you live, and the USCIS, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, is divided up in a whole bunch of different what they call districts. And each district has its own waiting list depending on how many people applied there and depending on the competency and the I shouldn't say that, depending on the number of examiners helping and adjudicating. So it could take, I've heard, as little as 6 months and as long as 18 months. But I would the national average is about 10 and a half to 12 months right now. Is that about what you're hearing, Allison? Yeah.
Yep.
Someone also asked a question about what if you applied for FAFSA as a lawful permanent resident? I actually don't know the answer to that. Do you, Allison, know?
They should also be able to receive financial aid because they are a legal permanent resident.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad Alonzo knows the answer to that.
Yeah.
And it won't impact their naturalization case as long as they didn't commit fraud on it. It's part of the, like what Allison was talking about. You can feel fine that I applied and I got it as long as you didn't commit fraud.
Right. Can I add, this is Anna from the Chancellor's Office of Cal State. Financial aid is not any government assistance. So we just want to clarify that piece. We want to make sure that you apply. If you're a student, even in process, you may qualify for FAFSA. So I would check with your financial aid office to make sure if you qualify for financial aid. What type is it, the DREAM Act or the federal financial aid? So please check with your financial aid folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Great disclaimer. We always want to make sure that we're connecting with our financial aid offices, with our representatives. I see we have 2 minutes left. We have a lot of great questions that are still coming in, and unfortunately we don't have time to answer all of them live, but very quickly, there's one about the cost, and on the screen it shows that the cost is $725 to apply for naturalization. There might be other fees attached to it depending on if you're working with a private attorney and not one of the legal service providers supporting the state, or one of the 9 legal service providers supporting the California community colleges and or the Cal States. I will, in my follow-up email to all of you, share the link to all of the California community colleges legal service providers that are supporting free of charge to our students, faculty, and staff. We'll also share the link to the Cal State's legal services that are also supporting their students, faculty, staff, and alumni, as well as the general list for the entire state of California. So I thank you, Allison and Eric, for your participation today and sharing just a little bit about the naturalization process and how to get started. Thank you, everybody, for taking some time out of your busy schedules to connect with us. You'll receive a follow-up email from me with everything that we discussed today to your inbox with the email that you used to register. So thank you all. I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.